Welcome to Bloomberg Personal Finance, the show that will help you manage your money. I'm Lane Bajardi. Thanks for joining us. Women fill more than half of all U.S. jobs, earn over half the college degrees, and make up the fastest-growing sector of new business owners. Yet many haven't taken the estate planning steps necessary to protect their assets. I discussed estate planning for women with attorney Patricia Annino, partner at Prince, LaBelle, Glovsky & Tie, and author of the book Women and Money.
Well, frequently women come too late. They come after a husband's died or after a parent's died, and they haven't sort of taken charge of the planning process at the time when they should have. And so they come maybe never having understood what the family finances are. The most frequent question a widow will ask me is, do I have enough? And what I want to say is, why are you asking that question now? Proper planning should have been put in place a long time ago, and you need to think about that, while your husband is alive, while your parents are alive, while you have an ability to affect the course of the affairs.
And you find that women are different than men when they look at this situation, they look at it differently, they approach estate planning differently?
They do. Well, a lot of women are not as comfortable dealing with the financial issues and are not as comfortable going in and taking charge and making sure that our affairs are in order. I like to analogize it to, the reason I wrote the book is about 4 years ago I was on a flight and a stewardess came in front of me, like she always does, and said, for safety instructions, if the barometric pressure in the cabin changes and oxygen masks drop from the sky and you're traveling with a small child, put the mask over your own face first. That's how you make sure that everybody else is protected. And women really run around making sure that everyone else is protected, and it goes against their nature to make sure they're protected themselves. And that's the psychological difference in the approach.
And no matter the situation, whether it's a husband dying or a divorce or some other situation where
or they're single or they've never been married or they're widowed, the most important thing you can think about is, have you put yourself in a position where you're protected, and therefore that allows you to make sure your children are protected, your husband is protected, your significant other is protected, your charity is protected?
How do you do that? How do you approach that and really have an understanding of how that protection is?
There's no way to do it except to dive in. You've got to figure out what your assets are, what your net worth is. If you have a significant net worth, then you're worried about covering estate taxes. If you have a net worth that isn't where you want it to go, then through the estate planning process, you have to create the wealth that's necessary. People will come to me and they'll say, well, my husband has $1 million of life insurance. And I'll say, well, that sounds like a lot of money, but that's $50,000 of income. On average, $1 million generates $40,000 to $50,000 worth of income. So if you don't want to go back to work or his income goes away, and vice versa, because today a lot of families are two-income families, think about creating the wealth that's necessary till your other wealth builds up. Because that's a huge impact in how you're going to be able to navigate afterwards. Do you have enough money to live on?
Do women of different ages, different generations, make different mistakes or errors in approaching estate planning?
Through the phases of life, you should focus on different things when you're single, than when you're married, than when you're remarried, than when you're widowed, than when you're divorced. And estate planning is a process. You need to start on it. It changes as your life changes, as your circumstances change, as the tax law changes. And what's important is to keep on that path and understand it, because different things will be important to you at different phases.
Let's take some of these different phases. A single woman in her late 20s, what should she be thinking about right now?
She should have a will, and look at Terry Schiavo. She should have a health care proxy. Regardless of age, you should have a health care proxy. A health care proxy allows you to designate who's going to make your medical decisions. I think Terry Schiavo was in her 20s, or maybe early 30s, when she had that accident. I'm positive that she didn't contemplate that was going to happen to her.
Take it a step further. A woman in her late 30s, early 40s with teenage and younger children. What should that person be thinking of?
Who's going to be the guardian for the younger children? Who's going to be in charge of the money? If she's married, is there going to be enough money to support the family? If she dies first, will her husband have enough money? If both of them die together, who's going to be the trustee? Should it be the same person as the guardian? Under what circumstances should funds be distributed over to the children? Some people pay more attention the first time they leave an infant and go to Disney World for the weekend and leave all the instructions on the refrigerator. This happens, call this person. This happens, call that person. And then they'll put the time into thinking about, well, what if I go on that plane and I never come back?
And so many parents travel together.
And so many parents travel together.
And How about later on in life?
Later on in life.
And later on in life, you probably find people now of the generation that maybe in in their early 60s and 70s, they may not have done the type of work that others have done.
The scariest thing that could happen to me is not that I die, it's that I become disabled or incapacitated and live. Mm-hmm. Have you put your affairs in place so that the person you would pick to be in charge of your financial affairs, write your checks out if you can't, make your deposits, do all of that, have you legally put that mechanism in place? Mm-hmm. And the health care decisions. And what about long-term care? Mm-hmm. That's one of the biggest issues for women. Women, on average, outlive men by 7.5 years. Mm-hmm. That means the woman's probably taking care of her husband, may not be able to lift him, and ultimately her husband may predecease her, and she will have nobody who's able to live in the house and take care of her.
Beyond not planning, what else? What are some of the biggest mistakes that people make when it comes to estate planning?
Not staying on the plan. Mm-hmm. Thinking that they did it once, they never have to look at it again, their affairs are in order. I mean, it's a natural human thing. Nobody wants to deal with death. Nobody wants to deal with disability. And nobody wants to deal with it when they've just been diagnosed with something serious. So the biggest psychological challenge is to do this when there's absolutely, positively no need to do it. And no one wants to do that.
Attorney Patricia Annino, author of the book Women and Money. Coming up next, Saving for College.